Hello, my name's Aston. We're doing more economics. Yeah, double posts. We're gonna talk about Adam Smith and the division of labor. Now, Adam Smith, I think he's a really old economist, right? And the thing is, he wasn't really an economist. He was more of a philosopher. And the demand, the supply, the invisible hand he talks about, that's all political philosophy. Like I said, economics is all about critical thinking, which is why we developed all this. It's all about the logic, the critical thinking, the frameworks of how everything operates. This is Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations, and we're going to start with the first chapter, the division of labor. As you can see, I have a lot of these written down, just some small points, but I will explain all of them. So essentially, the division of labor can be defined as the breaking up of the production process into smaller bits where each worker specializes in each part of the production. Adam Smith mentioned that this works best in simple manufacturing processes, right? So this can also work in larger processes, but the actual task has to be simplified, is what he means. He gives a really good example about this in pin making. So Adam Smith, when he wrote this book, he wrote it based on what he saw and not actual real evidence, but he said that what he saw was enough. So essentially, what happens is if one person makes a pin, a single person, right? So first he gets all the materials, then he has to draw the wire, then he has to shape the wire, then he has to put the pin on. And Adam Smith said that one person will make one pin a day. Now, if you divide this pin making process across, let's just say 18 processes, simple processes like drawing the wire, like I mentioned, or maybe just hammering the pin together, then he said 10 workers will be able to produce 48,000 pins a day. That is a huge productivity increase. So, then we talked about divisibility. So, most cities, most productions, they have arts and manufacturing. Farmers just farm, workers just work in this case. But this is not always true. So, this can also be seen in the agricultural sector. Now, farmers just farm because, when you're making agriculture, when you're making crops, growing crops, you can't just produce them. It's not the same as making a box. It's not the same as making a pin, drawing a wire. It's not the same thing. Agriculture requires growing the crops. It requires time to grow the crops, and it requires good conditions. They are affected by seasonality, which is why he says that the division of labor is not as divisible in these sectors. So, of course, that means there's less productivity gains from division of labor. Now, he said that there are three main pros to the division of labor. One of them is dexterity. Boom. So when you do the same thing over and over and over again, eventually you'll become more skilled at doing it because repetition increases productivity. So because you know the process better, and of course, you're human, you'll increase your skills, you'll increase your dexterity, which means that if you're a chef and you keep cutting vegetables, eventually you'll become faster and faster and faster and faster. So it's the same process over here, dexterity. And the next one is time saving. So with dexterity comes time saving because let's just take the chef example. If it takes you, let's just say in the beginning, 2 minutes to cut a carrot. I have no idea why it takes 2 minutes to cut a carrot, but just an example. Eventually, as you do it faster and faster and more, you get used to using the knife, you get used to the carrot, washing the carrot, peeling the carrot, and then eventually it'll come down to 1 minute, maybe just 30 seconds. Who knows? You're a good chef. And obviously, that shows you from 2 minutes to 30 seconds, that's a big drop. That's a time saving of 1 minute and 30. So that's why he said that you're saving time. And the next one is innovation and capital. So many tools, many specialist tools that we use today came from workers who were working in the task. And they were like, you know what? I want to find an easier way to make my job. more efficient. I want to use less work and get more output. So many tools that have come about today have come from workers looking for more efficient ways to perform their jobs or their tasks, or just easier ways because we're lazy. So essentially, all these three benefits link to productivity. They all are a productivity multiplier. So all these three things will boost your output, will boost your productivity, and if you're pretty fast at it, the workers will get more pay. So we can talk about this in terms of economies of scale. If you're producing more units, let's just take the pin for example, 10 workers, 48,000 pins, right? Now it's a lot better compared to one person to make one pin. So one person, one pin, there is like no unit cost because there's no average, but 48,000 pins, you can divide that by the costs, like for the workers, the cost for the capital and the tools they used, and then you get a much lower unit cost. That means that since there's cost savings, they'll pass these cost savings onto consumers in the form of lower prices, meaning that, that's what Adam Smith says, there'll be general wealth and plenty. So he said that even the lowest in society can benefit from the division of labor. So because there's lower prices in the economy, assuming there's manufacturing sectors are doing this, everyone's doing some kind of division of labor, then that means that the total prices in the economy will fall, which can give the consumer more purchasing power, and they'll have more choice because there's more items being produced and they're being produced at a lower cost. So that means, hey, I get more items and there's also a lower price. So it's honestly a benefit. He calls this universal opulence, which is basically wealth spread across all aspects of society. Now, he mentions two different kinds of societies, rude and civilized. In a rude society, people mainly produce the goods themselves, while in a civilized society, the task is divided by the people. They're divided. People, they don't produce it by themselves. They rely on one another to produce each other's goods, like the bread from the baker, or the fish from the fisherman. It's like that. So he said that in a rude society there will be less productivity, which means that there will be less goods, which means that will be higher prices, and there will be less choice, which is why in a civilized society with more productivity from the division of labor and its benefits, you will get more goods, you will get a larger surplus, you will get more choice, and you will get lower prices from lower unit cost economies of scale. So this is called the network effect. He said that the poorest worker in a civilized society will be wealthier than the richest king in a rude society. This is because, not wealthier in the sense of riches, because obviously a king will be more rich than, a random worker, but richer in the sense of quality of life, in the sense of choice, in the sense of purchasing power. The poorest worker in a civilized society is wealthier than the king. So, like I said, all these benefits over here, this is called the network of health. And this is from the wealth from abundance. I hope that was clear. Let's go to the next page. So, truck, barter, and exchange. This is what trade means to Adam Smith. Truck, barter, and exchange. And this is not designed, but it's natural. So what he argues is that humans can't survive on benevolence alone. Benevolence is essentially the act of kindness where you don't expect something back. So in this case, you will never trade with somebody and not get your own benefits. We are selfish creatures. We trade so that we can maximize our own benefits. But he argues that this selfishness actually leads to more productivity and more gains in society. So you can go back in time to the earliest humans, like caveman, and before there was a government, before we even knew how to speak properly, we would actually specialize in different tasks. For example, in the early days, women were often in agriculture. They were the ones who would grow the crops. They would be the ones who would cook the meals, while the men would go hunting and they would gather the meat. They would they would fight for, and they would protect the tribes. While I told you the woman will cook, raise the kids, traditional. By the way, this is early humans, not like 1990s. Like this is like BC. So, like I said, we survive on exchange. This is different. So, now let's talk about that real quick. So, Adam Smith believes that we are all born the same. Wow, Adam Smith. So he believes that every single individual is born with roughly the same amount of talent, innovation, and skill. Right? Everyone's born the same in his eyes. So what he says is people diverge in skills and talents and ability because of three things. He says the first one is customs, habit, and education and training. The education training is the last one, by the way. It's combined. So, okay, habit makes sense. It's what you do on a daily basis. Of course, if you cook more on a daily basis, or let's just say you live alone, of course you'll be better at cooking, at cleaning, compared to someone who has a nanny at home. But then there's education and training. I think this one's kind of self-explanatory. If you're trained to do something, then of course you'll be better at doing it compared to someone who didn't get trained. And if you're educated in something like economics, like me teaching you, for example, someone who didn't watch this video, or someone who doesn't have any training or education or knowledge in economics, will be worse than you. But what does customs mean? Customs, actually, when he says customs, he means the environment around you. Nurture, essentially. So he says that a farmer's child will be exposed to more of the wilderness. He'll be seeing his dad maybe of course grow the crops, agricultural. He'll be treating the cows maybe, and he'll get more knowledge about farming, while a merchant's child might be exposed to seeing his parents barter, trade more often. So he'll get more skills in bargaining, which is why these skills diverge. Then Adam Smith says that we are the only species, we're the only species on Earth to exchange, to trade, to specialize, is what he argues. Wait, specialize? Hold on, 1 second. Don't dogs specialize? Like, they have different breeds of dogs. You got greyhounds, you got corgis, you got so many. And they have literally vastly different functions. They have literally genetically built different Rottweilers. They all have, and canines actually, and they use different breeds for these German Shepherds. They got everything. So how are we special? We don't specialize. We're literally all the same. We're all the same people, right? So how are we specialized? And even ants and bees, they specialize. What do you mean? They literally have different functions. I saw this video actually. There was this ant, right? And their function is Tupperware. They'll be fed enormous amounts of honey, of bugs, and other kinds of glucose. And then their guts will literally explode out, and it would turn to some kind of ball, and they'll be hung on the ceiling, and they kind of glow. And it's so weird. And it's imagine your life being Tupperware. That's your job. That's your duty. In North Korea, at least, okay, this is kind of off topic, but in North Korea, if I'm not wrong, there's someone who decides your role in life. He'll literally tell you the job you're supposed to do for the rest of your life. I don't know how they decide this, but I just know that that's a fact in North Korea, at least. So back to what I was saying. These lions, they might group together. They might, they might hunt differently. They might use differences in skill, but they use it for their own benefit. That's the thing. The stronger, the bigger lion who takes down the buffalo will get more to eat, will scare off the other lions in the pride. The dogs also, they do it for their own mutual, but not mutual, they do it for their own benefit, their own selfish desires for food and water. But humans, on the other hand, we exchange our talents for not just for our own benefit, but for society's benefit. And by the way, back to that specialization point I made about bees and ants and everything. So the thing is, Adam Smith says that we specialize, it's not like, okay, ants at least, they specialize genetically. They are literally forced to specialize. They don't have a choice. We specialize on our own terms. We specialize in what we want to specialize. You want to go into economics because you think it's fun, you have some other kind of motive to go into economics? Cool, go into economics. That's what he says. We do it willingly. They don't do it willingly. They do it genetically, and they're born to do it. We do it because we have the knowledge to go into these kind of fields, and we know that the benefit it provides not just to us, but to everyone around us. Hold on, let me just go back here. Yeah. So we exchange our talents to create a common stock of goods, which he calls the surplus, and that we can trade with individuals to maximize our own benefits. So it maximizes ours and it benefits society. What else do I have? I already talked about markets. Oh, actually, yeah. So, back to what I was saying. There's, of course, some limitations to his theory. And the first one is he only spoke about what he saw. In the book, at least, The Division of Labor, he spoke about like the pin makers, and he gave more examples about farming and manufacturing, which I did mention, but he only wrote about what he saw. He didn't provide any actual evidence, hardcore evidence, any sources. He just wrote about everything he saw. It's more like a journal, basically. A journal, and he wrapped around the theory. But there are some limitations to the theory of the division of labor, or the division of labor. Now, the first one is market size. The benefits of specialization and the division of labor depends on the market size. Now, let's just say you have a larger market. Okay, cool. If you have a larger market, that means if you specialize, you're more productive, you're able to produce more goods, and you're able to create a larger surplus. That surplus can then be traded for more goods. So you also get the benefit. Okay, you do increase your cost by specializing, because while your unit costs fall, your total cost will rise, obviously. But if you're able to trade more and, of course, get more money out of it, then you make more profits, which is the main incentive to specialize. For any kind of private firm, they only specialize because they want to benefit themselves. Firms, profits, individuals, of course, are also profits, but it could be wages and everything else. That's why we specialize in our own fields. We don't go into every kind of field that we want to. I like learning about biology, but I'm not going into biology. No way. I'm stuck in economics, and I want to be stuck in economics because it benefits me in the long term from wages. And you, I don't know, just do whatever you want in life. Then he says that if there's a lower market size, that means that there's no incentive to trade. Why would you trade your surplus for nothing? Because there's no one demanding it. There's excess in the market. You would have to trade your surplus for a lower price, and then you make less profits. And then why would you even specialize at this point? So he says that's limited by the market size, and he explains that these differences, like for example, landlocked countries like Chad, for example, they don't really have any water transport, so they can't transport their goods like cross borders for cheap. We can do that because of the globalization. We have these and containerism. We have these huge cargo ships, like insanely huge, and we can like stock in goods, like big and small, and we can sell them in large quantities around the world for a low price, which is a good thing about globalization. But if you're in a landlocked country, that means you'll have to manually transport all these things, whether it be in trucks or maybe in some kind of van, and whatever it is, it takes more time and it definitely costs more money, which is why he says this is why landlocked countries are less wealthier, because they trade less. Speaking of wealthier, we're talking about rude and civilized societies. So in the same way, in a society that's rude, there'll be less trade occurring because when you produce most of what you get, or when you produce most of the goods by yourself, that means that you'll have less to trade because you'll have less surpluses from less productivity. Since you're not specializing and you're not getting any of these awesome benefits listed over here, productivity gains all gone, which means that root societies will have less wealth. I think I already explained that earlier. But he explains that this is why the wealth of different countries differ. If your country has less innovation, if your country doesn't use division of labor or specialization and produces many of the goods themselves, i.e. a rude society, that means that you're gonna be less wealthier compared to a civilized society. Now we can go into politics, talk about democracies, but I think this last part, I'm gonna be a little more honest with you. I don't know how many of you guys know what you're gonna do in the future, or how many of you guys really understand the field you're going into and stuff. I don't know what I want to do. I love economics. I love teaching. I love theories, but I don't know. I'm looking at these awesome jobs like farming, and I'm looking at these like these production workers. They do such simple jobs and they get paid so well. I'm like, why am I struggling to go through all this? For what reason? So I don't know how many of you have gone through the same thing, like you're thinking about switching to a job, but it pays less, or maybe you don't know how safe it is or certain it is. Now, if you've been specializing in, let's just say, biology, but you want to go into economics for any reason, then in a way you are kind of wasting your resources, and you're not benefiting society, because if you're not doing what you're best at, then society is losing those goods and the value you provided. But that's where Adam Smith comes in. When we were talking about dogs earlier, from the built different part, and the bees and the wasps and these different kinds of birds, they all have physical differences, but we deliberately specialize. Adam Smith says that society benefits most from the division of labor, of course, and specialization, when people specialize in what they want to specialize, and then they exchange their talents. He says that you're human. You have your own desires. You have your own wants and needs. Economical value isn't just the value that's provided from, like the monetary values that you get from the job, the wages, the security. It's also qualitative. It's also the satisfaction you get from doing this. And better yet, if you're a biologist or ecologist and you go into economics, you might be able to provide some of the theories from biology into economics, which is, by the way, what another person did. He is actually an ecologist, and then he made an economic paper. His name is Harden, not James Harden, some other kind of Harden. I forgot his first name, but it's with an I. Just saying, if you don't know what you want to do, and if you're not sure, Adam Smith says, take that risk, take the jump, because ideas is how the economy grows. I think I'm going to end it here before I, blabber on and bore you guys. This is all my work. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm going to do another shout out, not to me this time, but I want to shout out to you, to anyone watching this video till the end, or maybe anyone who skipped the middle because they got bored or just want to see me blabber and just journal. I would like to say shout out to you guys. You guys are goats, and you guys are awesome. Thank you.